Welcome to Your Body Talks. This is a series of chats with your girls, Jessy Morrison and Dianne Ojar. We're just sitting here having fun talking about how your body speaks to you, as well as the Akashic readings, and so much more. So we'd like you to sit back and enjoy the show. If you have a question, please do feel free to reach out to us at dsjshow2020 at gmail.com. We want to hear your questions so we can answer them for you. So I have a lovely co-host here. You know her, Jessy Morrison. For those who don't know her, Jessy is one of the incredible women who have a wealth of knowledge, truly a wealth of knowledge. And for myself, I'm just a humble servant, just making Jessy look amazing right now. And we love to have fun. This is what it is. Jessy is saying, like, what are we talking about? It's like, we love to have fun. This is what it is. A serious topic, but we love to have fun. So, Jessy, a topic that I love, very interested in, it's the Akashic Records. So, I wanted you to
Mhm.
read something to us because we're going to take you on a journey right now, which will, for some, might be very interesting. For others, we're like, where did that come from? But I just want as a disclaimer to know you don't have to believe that anything we say. We respect your beliefs and your faith. However, if you have an ounce of curiosity, this is where you need to be with Jessy and Dianne. Jessy, hit it, girl. This should be like
Well,
a, we should put some music and have some DJ show here now. Go ahead,
yeah,
Jess.
we need a DJ.
Yes, we
All
do.
right, you have asked me about the Akashic records,
Yes.
and the Akasha is believed to be an old Sanskrit word that meant sky or space. So it's been interpreted in many different ways. It also is listed in most of the religions around the world. And like you, I was raised Roman Catholic. I went to a nursery school and kindergarten in a nun's convent. So yeah, I was pretty indoctrinated, but I was very happy being indoctrinated in that faith because I would sing all of the hymns and I would talk to Jesus, and I always felt I had this connection. I didn't really have the connection with my mom and dad, but I knew that even if they didn't love me, God loved me. Now they did love me, but not in the way that I knew was an unconditional love. And I remember I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I was always talking to my angels, and it would freak my mother out. You can't do that. That's against religion. Don't talk to your angels. And I couldn't understand why, because they were always there for me. But I remember saying to her one day, she says, I said, I can't wait until I die. I just can't wait until I die. And I wasn't being dramatic. But for me, and she was appalled, she was so upset. But for me, it was like, when I die, I know there is a big book of all the answers that will be made available to me. And why don't these humans have it here? So it's like the Akashic records is an energy in space that we can tune into that apparently holds the collective consciousness of all the beings who have ever lived on Earth, all across time, across all dimensions. Some people think of it as a magical database if we bring it up to modern terms, but for me it was like a library of books with, and I still picture it that way, big, beautiful leather chairs, open skylights, plants everywhere, and angels, pretty much my impression of angels, moving the books around just like librarians would, and offering me tea or something. It's very old English in my head. It's very peculiar, but it's like there is an energy that we can tune into, and you don't need to be hypnotized to tune into it. You don't need to be in a deep meditative state. The more you clear the lower frequencies of shame and pain and loneliness and apathy and grief and all of those energies that make us feel very heavy and go into the lighter energies of willingness and acceptance and love and joy and peacefulness and ease and confidence, those energies expand into somehow this where I can read other people's energies. Now, as a child, I would read people's bodies. I would know if somebody was walking down the grocery aisle and had a hip problem, or if their heart was, scar tissued or something. And I wasn't trying to be invasive. It's just I felt like I could help everybody, and I would run up to them and I'd put my hands on their hip or their knee, and my mother would say to me, Jessy, what are you doing? You don't touch strangers. And it's, but mommy, I can help them, mommy. And I'd forgotten about that until I had a little girl, and Laura was doing exactly the same thing. We were going through the IGA one day, and she saw someone that was struggling. And I had learned you ignore people like that. You pretend they don't exist, and you just go on with your own agenda, right? And she walked up to this lady, and she put her hand on the woman's knees, and she just said, "Do you feel better now?" And this woman was, "Why are you touching me? Get away from me, child." But I watched my daughter as her skin, which was tan because it was summer, went pale, and circles were around her eyes, and you just saw the life force energy coming out of her. And then she slept for 4 days, and it was like, what is going on here? And even then, I wasn't necessarily tuning into the akasha or anything, but I started looking for answers on earth. I started asking the body, what do I have to do here? How do I shield my daughter? Because I was still in that mindset of fear. What is she giving away here? And it wasn't about shielding. It was about expanding her light so she could become more of a lighthouse, so she could draw the energy from the universal source energy into her own body and give people that energy, not her own energy. And this took us years and years of figuring it out. I think Laura was about maybe 6 or 7 when I had finally discovered Reiki. So this is 1990. She was born in 92, so what would that be, 1998? And I was taking a Reiki class, and I had to take the kids with me because the babysitter didn't show up for this, and they got it. They understood it. My son was like, "Oh, wow, Mom, let me do this to you." And Laura was, "Oh, let me do it to you." And the kids were having such a great time playing with this energy, and I was still trying to get my head around it. And we had our attunement. I remember being sick for many, many days. It was like I was in a seasick boat. Even though my mattress was on the floor, I could barely move and go anywhere because I was shifting through a lot of energies I had taken on. My father was bipolar. My ex-husband was manic
Mm-hmm.
depressive. My mother had violent tendencies back then. And it was like there was so much that I had bottled up inside of me to get along with these people. And I had always been the peacekeeper. My mom and dad were very volatile. My dad was big with his fists. My mother was big with her voice, and I was always caught in the middle. So I was the peacekeeper. So after my Reiki attunement, all this energy had to come out so that I could find me. And it was like, I remember the day I was finally well, and it was like, oh my God, life is amazing. Life is so beautiful. I had no electricity, no money for groceries. My ex wasn't paying child support or anything. And here I was trying to take care of 2 little kids and find a job. And then I found out my mother wasn't going to live through the year. So there was a lot going on. But I had to connect to my higher self instead of the worldly self to find out what was going on here. And the Akashic Records is one way of doing that. When you ask, why am I here? Or some people ask, God, why are you doing this to me? And the answers were very clear. And it was funny because at around that time, somebody loaned me the book, pretty much a stranger, said, here, I think you'll enjoy this book. And it was Neil Donald Walsh's Conversations with God. And when I read the first one, then I had to find the second volume and the third and the fourth. But I also remember somebody at the Reiki place that I was going to said, I think you're a star seed. Here, read this book. And I looked at her and I thought, are you nuts? Mind you, I have always been fascinated with science fiction. I love looking at the stars. I talk to the stars all the time. And my ex and I had a vow that if one of us disappeared, we would know the other one went into a spaceship and that they were fine.
Okay. How
I
did
thought,
that work
what is,
out? How did that?
damn, he
This.
wasn't taken up in the spaceship, but that's okay. I had the best 20 years of his life. It's all good now. He was my best friend for 20 years. He was in a car accident, and when he came out of that car accident, he was someone else. And I look at that now, and I say, oh, he had a walk-in because all his values changed. He became a very angry, violent man. He didn't like his kids. It was just bizarre. The change in the personality was something I couldn't explain at the time, but now looking backwards, yeah, he'd been taken over pretty much, I would say, by a shadow energy. Um, Maybe it was a way of enacting his soul wounds or just kicking me out of trying to make a marriage work that was taking a lot of energy and showing me that, yeah, there's another way of looking at the world, Jess, and it's time you opened your eyes.
Lovely.
So the Starseed book, I can't even remember what it was called. I sort of remember the cover, but when I read the book, I cried. It wasn't a very big book, but it was like, oh my God, all of this makes sense to me. All of this makes sense. But in those days, we didn't have internet, so I didn't know where to go for more information. So I sort of dove into the Reiki energy, which gave me back my faith, not in Christianity, but in the universe and in God, in knowing that I'm really not alone here. I started talking to my angel energies again and pulling them in, not like, hey, what should I do? But it's like, oh, could I have a little bit of this kind of flavor? Can I have a little more strength over here, please? Archangel Michael, can you look after my kids? And I started pulling all of that in. And really, I look at that all now as me tapping into different energy frequencies of my own strengths. Um,
Lovely. You know,
yeah,
um,
and
you know what my favorite book says? The little soul and the sun.
oh, yes, I love that.
Oh
I
my
absolutely love
goodness.
that.
I've read that to clients so many times. It's such an
Yeah,
adorable, also by Neil.
it is Neil Donald Walsh. Yeah,
yeah. Um
no, it's
w-
phenomenal.
One of the things, we talk about with Akashic records is when it's also another interpretation is about the deeds, your good deeds. When you serve and there's, there's a heavens bank and there's a physical bank. So when you have karma, there's negative karma and there's positive karma. When you replace and transform the negative karma into positive karma, there's also where that is recorded in the Akashic records. So when you say for Judgment Day, when you to pearly white gates and you have to declare this is what it is. But I gotta tell you a story. If you're in science fiction, this I don't know who's gonna believe this or not, but I swear it is true because I have witnesses. Back in the 80s, I was actually living in New York. My girlfriend, I was living in Queens. My girlfriend was living in the Bronx. My husband, well, wasn't husband at the time, but husband and my girlfriend was in the car with us. And we had a car that had a sunroof. And it was a summer evening or something. So we went to drop her home. As we got closer to her apartment building, there were a bunch of people, true story, bunch of people standing outside and looking up in the sky. And they were, police officers on horses with their flashlights. Jesse, I have seen the other side.
Mm.
There was this huge, I can't even describe how huge this thing was. Just sitting there, as low as a cloud, sitting there with lights on, not moving. Now, nobody's going to tell me I'm crazy because my husband was there
Mm-hmm.
and my girlfriend was there. It was the strangest thing. Cool, but strange. Sitting there, suspended. How do you explain that? So as I dropped just around where she lived, as I dropped her off and we started to move back, to drive off, then it started to move a little bit, but it's so slow. This thing was massive, huge. How do you explain that? The next day, my girlfriend's sister saw it on the news and they recorded it. But I didn't get to see it because her father loved baseball, the Yankees, and he went and he used to record the games and record it on that.
Mm.
But what happened was because for unidentified objects, I'm going to say,
Mm-hmm.
it's not documented and it's not talked about. It's all about a hush hush. But I am telling
Well,
you,
I'm pretty sure it is documented, but yeah, it's
well,
not
no, not to the,
given
but
out
it's
to the general
documented.
population.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. It was, but then they took it off. They didn't speak about it again. But I'm telling you, I had witnesses. And up to this day, every time I mention it to my husband, he kind of smiles because he can't say, no, he was there.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say There's something out there. I saw it with my own eyes. So I have two other people who saw it with me. So there's so many things out there we don't know about. And up to this day
Yeah,
we didn't know what it was.
we've had our education very limited so that we are controlled in certain ways and so that we adapt to society the way they would like us to adapt to. Um, yeah, when my daughter was she was going to she was 21, she was going to a birthday party downtown in Barrie, and we didn't realize it, but she had been stalked on Facebook. That's actually why she's not on Facebook these days. Um, and two girls had taken a dislike to her for some reason, or women. She didn't know them at all, but they knew some of her friends, so they knew exactly where she was going that day. Um, they had, when they attacked her, they sat on her, grabbed her head from behind, and were slamming her face into the pavement. It took 6 men apparently to get these women off of her, and they called me to come and pick her up from wherever she was downtown. I couldn't go because I had torn my psoas muscle in an injury, which I always look back because shortly thereafter I was fine, but it was like the universe took me out so that
Hmm.
her brother would take her and deal with this situation instead of mommy interfering. And my son was wanting to be a policeman at the time, so he took her straight to the police station. First the hospital, and the hospital advised him to take her to the police station. But so Laura had a concussion. The concussion lasted about 2 years. We got her vision corrected with all the body talk I did. We got the scarring. The face was healing. The skin was healing. Her thyroid had been damaged and there'd been some heart damage done. We got her body repairing and everything. But I had this zombie walking around the house. She'd get up at 11 in the morning and be asleep again by 4 o'clock. And she had a bruised brain, is the only way I could describe it. But I could not get any life force energy in this girl. I would give her Reiki treatments. I would do bar treatments. I would do all kinds of things. But it wasn't until I started asking her higher self, her soul, her superconscious, it's like, where is Laura? There was no flip of the hair. There was no sparkle in the eyes. She didn't smile at a joke. She was just literally this empty shell walking around the house. And I got the impression that her soul was sort of standing beside and saying, I'm not coming here. This is what people on earth are like. I'm not having anything to do with it. And so I gave the body a choice to live or to die. And it was like, yeah, you don't have to be an empty shell here for the next 60 years. I'm giving you a choice. If you want to vacate, you can vacate, or you can come back into the body and make a difference in this world so that we can change it. And through muscle testing, her body kind of went, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, if you're here to make a difference and you were born at this time, let's make a difference. And I said, who are you? Where are you from? And it was like her eyes rolled backwards and she got very silent. I was just sort of asking questions. I didn't even mean to do a timeline therapy or anything. It was like when she came out of it, because I got very frightened, I said, I didn't hypnotize you. Come back, Laura. Talk to me, Laura. Come on. The body went limp, like totally empty. And when she did come out of it, and it felt like it was hours, but it was probably only 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, she said, I went back to the beginning of time. I went back to the very beginning of my incarnation. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, I'm not from Earth. I'm from a place called Mintaka. And we started asking the body questions then because we asked what was interfering with her life on Earth. What were the choices she had made in other lifetimes? And apparently, in all of Laura's hundreds of lifetimes, she has never lived past the age of 16. She had
Hmm.
always been murdered or raped or maimed or in a catastrophe. And it was like, okay, I have enough. Don't tell me this. I don't want to know. But through, again, me asking the questions of the body, it was like, okay, so where is Mintaka from? And she says, well, the water here on Earth just isn't clean enough. I come from this beautiful water planet. And we just kept asking questions. The personality that she has is she does not understand violence or hatred or any of those other, she, like as a person, she just never has. How could people be so mean to each other? And it's not that she's gullible, it's just that she sees the best in everybody because that is what she is. So she will trust someone before she distrusts somebody. She will not understand the choice of negativity. She loves water. She loves the ocean. She loves the lakes. But to her, no matter how clean the water on Earth is, it's always polluted. She doesn't like the Earth experience. For her body, it was like, I don't want to be here. And I remember her saying that when she was a little girl. She was about 8 years old, and I can't remember. We were standing. I guess I don't know where we'd been, but we were standing in front of a Swiss chalet. We were getting out of the car, and she said, I am so done. I want to go home. And I said, Laura, we're going to have something to eat and go home. And she said, no, not our house. And she pointed up at the heavens and she said, I want to go home. And she ran to the restaurant, and a car missed her by about an inch. And she just stood there. And she looked at him like, how dare you not hit me? Like, how could you not? This was my gateway, and you didn't take it. And the man got out, and are you all right? And she said, I'm fine. And she stomped her feet back at me, and she said, I'm sorry, Mummy. I guess I'm staying with you a little longer.
Was
And
she
I was
still with
saying that
you? She's
my
still with
jaw
you?
had my jaw had dropped, and it was like, okay, where do we go from here? She goes, it's not my time to leave. I missed the window. And at that point, I remembered something somebody had once said to me, that we get 5 choices to leave this planet. And I was in 4 life or death accidents myself, and each time I chose to stay here. So it's like, I've got one more, and I'm not leaving. Not until my mission is complete, and I help other people see that there is more to living on Earth, and tuning into your blueprint and having free will and choice than people are aware of. Um, what else can I tell you about Laura? I always, when she was in my womb, my son would call her Lorelei. He'd say, Lorelei, Lorelei, and he said she was a mermaid. He kept saying he brought me a mermaid, and like, she loves to swim. So yeah, we call her Lorelei sometimes. What
Isn't
else
that
is
incredible?
there?
But isn't that incredible how it's fascinating to me, um, the way how we don't really pay attention to some of the things people say or what we say or growing up. There's so many and there's so many stories we can share, and this is what we want to do here on Your Body Talks. We want to talk about the stories. We don't only want to be scientific. We don't want it to be a science behind it. We want it to be real talk, real conversations. And you never know, the simplest thing we might be talking about may draw somebody's attention and say, oh, really? Is that what that was? Because, Jesse, we don't know how people are inspired or motivated by the simple little things that we talk about.
True, very true. I
S-
remember trying to get pregnant for 13 years. I tell you, my husband and I practiced a lot. And all I
Jesse,
ever wanted.
Jesse, Jesse, that was a lot of practice, but better be a short story because we got to wrap this up. So let's tell us the 13 years. We
Well, I
want to
wanted to
we
be
want to hear
pregnant.
about
I
the
always wanted the
the
children.
Kama Sutra in this part of it. Okay, so
No, I'm not going to Kama Sutra. But I remember when my doctor saying to me I would never be pregnant. And when I went to my brother's wedding in San Francisco, I was so nauseous. I thought it was the roads because San Francisco is up and down, up and down, up and
yes, it
down. And we
is
made a joke that if I was pregnant, we would call the baby Frisco. And when I
Frisco.
came back, I would say I started talking to my womb at about that time. I started singing, remembering all the lullabies from my childhood. My figure started changing, and I went to the doctor and said, I think I'm pregnant. Well, I had 4 different tests, and they kept saying to me, you're not pregnant, you're not pregnant, you're not pregnant. I said, but I'm talking to the baby. And she said, Jesse, we're going to do one more test on you. You will see there's no baby in your womb. And then you'll go see a psychiatrist, won't you? You promise me you'll go see a psychiatrist. Because they thought I was having a hysterical pregnancy. So the last test was the ultrasound, and there was my son waving at me. So we had the dates all wrong because they were doing it to prove I wasn't pregnant. He was already in there for 4 months. And so he came out what they thought was early, but it was already late. His nails were long, like really long, and he had bangs. His hair was so long it went over his face when he was finally born. And the day I got pregnant with my daughter, he started interviewing other mothers because he thought I was sick and that I was dying. And I was telling him nothing, but I was nauseous all the time. And the day that I went into labor with Laura, my son had saying, Lorelei, Lorelei, come out and play with me. Lorelei, you're big enough. Come out and play with me. And that was the day I went into labor.
Well, Jessy, you have some very interesting stories. I have
We
to
all have
say,
interesting stories.
we,
We have
yes,
to
but
trust our bodies
we
more.
have to trust our bodies, but you have some very, 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 what I'm going to say, your children are very special beings, and we can learn a lot from them. And it
Yeah.
also allows us to look at our kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, and sit down for a moment and really fine tune, or tune in, I should say, sorry, and listen to them because what you hear.
Oh, they're miracles. We
They're
should be
miracles.
listening to the children. They are our mentors. We're not their mentors.
Absolutely. And on that note, I would like to say, you know, for those who hung out with us, I want to say thank you so much because I'm sure you must have learned something. And again, if you have a question, you want to reach out to us and you want to know something, please do drop us a line at dsjshow2020 at gmail.com. So, next time on Your Body Talks with Jessy Morrison and Dianne Ojar, I want to say thank you guys. Bring a friend, stick around, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Bye bye.